Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Expats in Ukraine. I'm your host, Corey. Today my guest, he's from the UK. He's a former British soldier, Ukrainian Marine, author of the book Live, Fight, Survive. He is Shaun Pinner. Shaun, how you doing, man?
Hey, it's good to be here. Finally here.
Finally, yeah, exactly. I'm super excited to have you. I saw so much about your book. I read so many articles about you. I don't know, I'm a big fan, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, and usually, so for the audience to better understand who the real Shaun is, I like to do this icebreaker at the beginning of my podcasts. Okay, so I'll give you two options. You pick one. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. The first one: Scotch egg or cutlet pokievsky.
Scotch egg.
Scotch egg.
Yeah,
Really?
come on.
Why?
I'm from London, so
You're
it's
from London,
Scotch egg. Yeah, I love Scotch egg.
So Scotch egg. Do you tell the audience it's like
breaded substance around an egg. So yeah, it's pretty.
and it's a hard-boiled egg, right?
Yeah, hard-boiled egg.
Okay.
Inside like a casing. It looks like a big baseball with bread in around the outside.
Yeah, I just googled weird English food and then I found that.
Yeah, I can't even describe it. I'm like, I'll have a Scotch egg. What is it? Oh, I don't know.
I was trying to compare it to something in Ukraine. I'm like, cutlet pokievsky.
Wasn't expecting that as an opener.
Okay, how about this? The Thames or the Dnipro River?
Oh, the Dnipro River, easy.
Dnipro River, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Cottage pie or holodiets?
Oh, we don't cook enough English meals in Ukraine, so I do miss them. I miss cottage pie, and one of the things I cook is shepherd's pie and cottage pie. So yeah, but cottage pie probably.
Cottage pie, yeah, I love shepherd's pie. I love cottage pie, and I hate holodiets. I'm sorry, guys.
I'm not a big Gretchka fan either, and that just kills Ukrainians, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. And last question: Watford or Mariupol?
Oh, Mariupol.
Mariupol.
Yeah, for sure.
Why
yeah.
Mariupol, man?
Man, it was my home since 2018, and I love being by the sea, and it changed so much in 5 years, before the invasion, and my friends, we built a community there, and it became home for a long period of time. So, and that's what the story, my story is really about, living there since 2018. So yeah, Mariupol all the way.
Yeah.
I've got nothing wrong with Watford, mind you, before everyone starts going, oh, what's about with Watford, But, I did move. I'd had a long time in the UK, and one of the reasons I came to Ukraine was really because I'd lost myself in a way. So here yourself, it's more of a work to live than live to work. I found myself doing 16-hour days in the UK and longer, running my own business, and really sort of was at a point in my life where I thought, what do I do? I want to be happy again. I'd been quite successful running a business in hazardous waste management, which is not sort of the most exciting job in the world, but running your own business gives you the kicks you need once you finish your military career, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I just had enough when I come to the end of a 9-year relationship, and my son had gone to uni and sort of found his drinking leg, so I wasn't seeing him very much, and really just started reevaluate what sort of made me feel happy. And I was in the army, British Army, for 9 years, and some of the happiest times I had with a rucksack. And I didn't have that academic background that I could take anywhere, and I wanted to travel. So a friend of mine just said, do you want to come to Mariupol? And
oh, wow.
And we need some instructors. And there was at a time when they were rebuilding after the annexation of Crimea, and the army was totally changing. And do you want to come over? And I said, yeah. And that's where I ended up here and stayed. I didn't go home for 5 years.
Before we get to your time in Mariupol, I know we're going to talk about that, of course,
Yeah.
a little bit extensively. But I want to talk about before you came to Ukraine. So you were in the military in the UK.
Yeah.
What made you decide to join the military?
16, lack of options. Wasn't academic, didn't particularly like school. Always loved the military. My family, my granddad used to come to stories, loved those old war films, and knew it was something I was interested in. Initially, I got into the Navy first. I was on my way to HMS Raleigh. And it was only my grandparents, my granddad at the time, who sort of said, I wouldn't do the Navy. You can't run away on the boat. You can run away on the ground. So I was like, and that was really one of the major sort of things why I joined the military. And then once you go into the military, you're indoctrinated into your regiment and your battalion, and just fell in love with that life. Really didn't know what I was going into fully. I was always a scout, or, Cubs and things like that. Always loved the outdoors, but just really fell in love with that brotherhood of the military, and all for one and one for all. And, just that outdoor life, and learning how to survive on nothing, and playing around with guns and explosives and, running every day. It was just amazing. I wouldn't say I was like top 1% special forces guy. I was never going to be like that. But, you know, I did quite well. I did 2 tours in Bosnia in the early 90s with the UN, 3 years operations with covering counter-terrorism in Northern Ireland. So I went to Belfast, Londonderry at the time, and working with COP, Covert Operations Platoon, and my recon unit doing covert surveillance. So I loved that. And then on a second posted to Bosnia in the early 90s, I went to America to do my Fort Lewis, Washington State, to do my SEER training, survival, escape, resist, and evade training, which again is what you join the army to do, about how to catch food and cook it tactically, and how to evade the enemy. SEER standing for survival, escape, resist, and evade. So you do that 6-week course that we did there and went to Bosnia. So for me, it was like when I came to Ukraine, I had that technical ability. I knew about Russian hardware because I'd spent 9 years learning how to fight Russians. So I knew all their hardware, I knew all their tanks, I knew their equipment, mines, and weaponry. So I had that ability. I probably didn't understand the political spectrum when I first came to Ukraine as much as I do now, obviously no. But I knew I could hold my own with the military side of it. And once you get to your battalion, it's pretty much the same. So, but that camaraderie just transitioned really well when I went to Ukraine.
Okay, I'm trying to get the timeline right. So you're in the UK military, and then you go to Bosnia, and then you go to the US, and then you start your business in the UK, and then you come to Ukraine. Is this right chronologically?
That's pretty much it.
Pretty much it. Okay.
I'd left the British military in about 2000. Spent 15 years working in a hazardous waste industry. I had run my own business and had some really good successes and some failures. But really, when my 9-year relationship went down the pan at sort of the early 40s, and then my son went off to uni, I was really that empath in life. You know, I'd probably say, you know, it could have had a midlife crisis. I probably had 2 by then, but before I decided to come here. But when I got here in February, it was very much, you know, minus 25, 4 feet of snow, and I landed in Kiev at Mariupol.
This was 2018, right?
2018, and
before you came, I'm sorry to interrupt. Before you came, what did you know about Ukraine? Or you just said, okay, Ukraine, let's go, let's do it?
Well, I'd always wanted to go to Kiev. I knew a little bit.
But why did you want to go to Kiev? Like, what made you decide?
Well, initially, I wanted to travel. So as like I said before, I wanted to travel. I didn't have those academic skills to be sort of take, you know.
Well, yeah, the reason why I ask is because I'm from the U.S., and when I think of I want to travel to Europe, I don't. People at home don't think about Kiev.
No, I always wanted to go to Odessa, and I like the pictures of Odessa, and I wanted to go to Crimea. But really, my options were that I needed to earn money if I was going to travel, and one of them was my friend was already working as an EOD specialist in Mariupol at the time. Okay. So when he said you want to come to be an instructor, I was already in Kiev at the time, and really that was. I just went down to see what the job was like initially. But I'd had a couple of good months. I didn't have to worry about money. I had an apartment. I just really was out for a bit of a good time and a bit see some friends that were already over here. Aidan Aslin being one of them, you know, and a few others. So, but I really hadn't made my mind whether I wanted to stay. But I was really liking the life, because by the time, like I said, I got here in February, it's 4 feet of snow. By the time it gets March, you get the first rays of sunshine. And I was here just enjoying myself. I was single at the time. It's an amazing city to be single in Kiev.
Like, what were your first impressions? Like, you came, of course, there's like a lot of snow. What do you think about the people? What do you think about the architecture?
Pretty bleak, to be honest. Would be the fair. When you land at the Mariupol, you see the transport systems, you come into and you just think, oh my God, it's like 4 feet of snow. And then there's icicles, like 2 feet icicles hanging off the buildings, and snow slipping off the roofs, and you just sort of, you're like, this is cold, this is bleak. And then somebody gives you salad for the first time, and you just think, you eat this stuff, you know, and then after a while you're like, oh, this is so good because it's so cold, and then you get different types of salad. And but generally, you know, my impressions were bleak. But when the first bits of sunshine comes, the whole country just changes. I mean, it turns into a completely different country. I mean, I absolutely love cherry season and the fruit season here. Spring here is amazing. Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen so many flowers or so many flower shops per capita. You know, it's just like so
Ukrainian
many.
women love flowers.
It's flower shops everywhere. So
you know the rule, right? So Ukrainian women, you have to give them an odd number.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you give them an even number, it's like bad luck or something like this, or you give it
to
people at funerals or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like tradition. So
Oh, I
keep
had
that in
no
mind.
idea.
Yeah.
I trust my florist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many flower shops here. The Ukrainian women, they love flowers.
Man, it
Yeah.
is. There's so many flower shops, and then the country just transforms into this, super cold climate into this then super hot climate where it's like 35 by 11 o'clock, and by the end of the day, it's 40 degrees in the summer, and you're just thinking, this is so hot. And then, back to the winter, the transition between the cold and the heat is really quick in Ukraine. So I found that really interesting because, what did we have? 3 days of spring before summer turned up. It's just crazy. So I sort of like the climates here. Where I live in Dnipro, there's a ski slope nearby, so we can go skiing if we wanted to. There was one in Mariupol too. And, there's a lot of freedoms in Ukraine that I fell in love with. One of them was like, it doesn't cost you £20 to park on the beach all day.
Yeah.
It's free. And you just go, what? £1.50 for a steak, 30p for a beer. It had its benefits in 2018. I just never went home for 5 years because then I just went walkabout, a Mick Dundee, Crocodile Dundee type walkabout, and went to so many different parts of Ukraine to experience the culture, or, mostly the east, but then down back to Odessa and Lviv.
Did you have any trouble like assimilating? Because you decided you wanted to live here. Do you know the language, Ukrainian
When
or
I
Russian?
came, no, I didn't know any. But after working in the military, you develop your own language with soldiers. So you end up speaking Rusglish or Ukrainsglish. And people I spent 9 months on a tour with, that didn't know a lick of English. By the time we finished the tour, well, Shaun, please sit down. Would you like chicken for dinner? And you're going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's amazing, So you end up learning. I learned Russian. I didn't learn Ukrainian, so I learned Suzyk for quite a long, and it's pretty good. I mean, I don't particularly like speaking Russian now, not because of there's any problem speaking Russian here. We talk Russian all the time in Dnipro. It's just for what Russia's done. I feel it's an obligation to now learn Ukrainian, and many people are the same way. One of the good things I think about the invasion, if you could call it good, is that Ukraine's broke away from the Russian shadow. Vishvankas were being worn on special occasions when I first got here. Now the people are wearing to work, and you can see them on the street. Yeah. And the Ukrainian language has come on leaps and bounds because nobody wants to speak Russian because Russians invaded. So, there are some positive things to come out of this, if you will. And I'm always a sort of a positive person anyway. I look to always an optimist. Never met a bunch of defeatists that do very much. You know what I mean? So I always keep a positive. But I learned Russian first, which is sort of put me on a bit of a back foot because, but like I said, there's no problems talking Russian in Dnipro. And then it took me about a year to integrate really everywhere I went. And once they realized I wasn't a war tourist, I was married to a Ukrainian, and I traveled. I got so much respect. And then once I learned Russian living in Mariupol, the doors just opened up. I became a section commander quite quick and stuff like that. So training was able to open up. My communication skills were able to get were a lot better.
I want to talk like a bit about your life in Ukraine before we get into kind of all of this deep stuff. So how'd you meet your wife, by the way?
My wife was a deminer working for a private...
A deminer?
Deminer on the front lines. I was on the front lines in the positions with the Marines, and she would be demining behind, in villages behind, for a private humanitarian company.
And she's from Ukraine?
She is from Crimea originally. She moved to Mariupol when they annexed Crimea, and then she's lost 2 homes now. We've lost 1 home. She's lost 2 homes to Russian invasions. So we met down there in Mariupol. We were friends for a long time before we decided to make it sort of more official. She's an absolute warrior, a full Ukrainian spirit, Russian speaking as well. As we fight the narratives now. People say that, Russian is banned in Ukraine. We say, no, actually, no. My family are Russian speaking Ukrainians predominantly. She knows Ukrainian, English and Russian. But most people in Mariupol spoke Russian. It was just easier. So, we dispel those rumors. Predominantly our community were predominantly Russian first language speaking Ukrainians who are now dotted around Europe.
Yeah, as a foreign guy, married to a local woman, like a Ukrainian woman, what is it like culturally? Like, what are the differences? Do you have any kind of issues?
Oh yeah,
the
well,
misunderstandings, I guess.
some communication
Like,
issues.
drink your vodka. No, I'd rather have whiskey. Like something
And
like this.
American English, English,
Yeah,
English. And I keep telling my wife there's no such thing as American English. It's just bad English, you know. And she's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
no, there's American English. And I was like, and then how many tenses do I know? I was
Yeah,
like,
okay.
3. And she's like, no, there's 12. You know, those sorts of things. And I was like, 12?
Yeah.
No, there is not.
Yeah.
You know, so and sometimes her English is better than me, better than mine. So you know, we do have a bit of fun with the English language. Like if
Yeah.
she doesn't understand a name of something, she's got some brilliant descriptions. Like a broom is a witch's vehicle.
A witch's vehicle.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah. She comes up with some classics. Straw. What is the name for this drinking stick? You know, and
Drinking stick.
so we have like lots of fun, and then she teaches me Ukrainian. She's always badgering me about learning Ukrainian now. So,
Yeah.
but communication can be fun, and we're the same with the units. But culturally, I think you've got
Because there's a lot of superstitions in Ukrainian culture. You know, for example, like the flower thing I told you about. It has
Yeah.
to be an odd number.
Yeah.
And you can't give somebody, you know, say you're entering someone's home, you can't pass them something while you're at the threshold of the door.
Yeah,
It's like bad luck.
yeah.
You can't whistle in the house.
There's lots. I didn't,
Yeah.
not my wife, but my friends were telling me about lots of fabled creatures that live in the country, house goblins that take the keys. And I was thinking,
Baba Yaga.
where have I come? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
What am I doing? And they joke with me
You're in
about these
Narnia.
things, you know, and it's like, so, and I'd be like, they'd say a word and it'll be like the house goblin, and you just go,
House
what?
goblin.
It's nicked my keys.
Is
you
that the one
it's
that takes the socks?
Yeah.
I think we have some in the US too, then.
Oh yeah, it's a sock monster. He's in my car sometimes. I have things like that in my bag. Yeah, my
Exactly.
rucksack. Yeah.
So you're married now, right?
Yeah.
To the Ukrainian woman. And how did your family feel about this? Did you have a wedding in Ukraine? Did you do it in the UK?
No, we got married in Mariupol. It was during COVID, so my family couldn't travel. We couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go home. My family had already come to Kiev and saw us before the wedding, but COVID struck. So really, it was just friends. So we got married in Mariupol and had some of my friends. I was pulled off the front line. I was able to take a couple of my friends to the wedding.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends in National Guard and Azov came to the wedding too. And unfortunately, just to put things into context, 60% of the men at my wedding are now either killed, captured from my picture. So, you know, it's hard to look back at those wedding pictures and think that was only 2020. And then half of those guys are now dead, captured, killed, and missing. So it really, including like now next door neighbor, my wife's ex-husband, and you know, we don't know where they are. It's still a lot of them are not able to write or communicate back to Ukraine. So not everyone gets to communicate home. So
I'm sure you talked with your family about this, about all the losses like around you, especially when you were in captivity and all of this. How do they feel about you being in Ukraine? Do they ever say like, you know, why don't you come home back to the UK, bring your wife?
the option's always there for one thing. You've got to remember, I had 13 years in the military now, 9 war tours. My mum's used to this.
Okay.
So my family is slightly used to my life of being a bit topsy-turvy, to put it bluntly. So, I mean, not to the extent of where I was captured in Mariupol and obviously held hostage by Russia, but really they understand that I was always searching for something. For me, I was just unhappy that when I came to Ukraine, I was just unhappy that my life didn't have a sense of meaning anymore. I didn't have a sense of belonging. I was very good at my job and a lot of money doing it. I was very good at being able to talk to people and turn my business over to a decent revenue. But I was just getting, is this really what I want? I'm driving around the M25 and just doing 16-hour days and doing this for the next 20 years. So something had to change, and I felt myself going down the wrong tracks, drinking more, meeting wrong people, and then I just felt I just needed to throw something out there. So Kiev was just where it all started, and you know, my family know not, you know, I was looking for something. It's actually given me a lot of direction now and purpose, which is great.
I mean, like I was telling you backstage, there's so many articles written about you online, man. You're such an interesting guy, especially everything that you've been through. And this book, you were telling me that Adam Kinzinger read your book, right?
Yeah, he dropped me a line. It was so really strange. I mean, my life, from meeting Roman Abramovich on the plane on the exchange and the Saudi princes entourage at Riyadh. And then really, I mean, you've got to remember, I was talking about this 5 years before. Me and Ada were blogging about this. We understood the importance of blogging, saying, if something isn't sorted now, you're going to end up with the scenario we got. Someone's going to take advantage of it, you know. And we understood the importance of reaching out to the media as much as we could. Nobody was interested. It was the forgotten war. Nobody was really bothered. And the minute, obviously, I was exchanged, then all that's there. It's all online. You can see it. It's on the YouTube chat, all our blogs, all our pictures, our lives on social media. So the minute we were exchanged, we weren't just some war tourists. We were actually one of a handful of people living in Donbass, married to Ukrainian. I had legal residency in the country. I never set foot outside the country. I had legal residency in. Yeah, I was tried as a Nazi mercenary terrorist. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So we were able to then use the platform that Russia gave us after we were exchanged. And people like Adam Kansinger would just, he said, I read your book. And I was like,
wow.
I honestly didn't know who he was. So I Googled his name. I went, shit, it's got 1 million followers on.
No, he's an outspoken critic of the Republican Party in the U.S. He was, you know, a Republican congressional person, but then he got ousted basically from his seat or from his party because he was anti-Trump and voted to impeach Trump during one of his impeachments.
I read his book as well because he could courtesy to read mine. So I read his, and he's a very honourable man. He had a lot of ethics that made him change. He wasn't happy with that. And then I learned more about him, talking to him. We became friends. And, you know, he's talking to me about his time in the military and how he'd done resistance training. And that's why they booked appeal to him. And then we became friends after that. And, you know, so yeah, it's been a really interesting time. I met John Sweeney, who's wrote Killer in the Kremlin. And we become friends doing work for him and his charity. And, you know, everybody's in this together, which is great. Nobody's out for like personal gain. This is about raising the platform of Ukraine and keeping things going. And my book was just a story about my story about Mariupol.
Before we get to the next topic I want to talk about is, you know, the siege of Mariupol. But I just want to ask, you know, one more question about kind of like your personal life here, how you got to that situation. So what was the process like of joining, I guess, the Ukrainian Armed Forces?
Or
just tell me like how you did it. Or...
It was twofold really. For 2 years I was a sniper instructor with Azov. I had a great time there as a volunteer, working down in Urivka. I had a base that was Yanukovych's old beach house, which was one of the best bases I'd ever been stationed at. It had an Olympic-sized swimming pool and a private beach.
Golden toilets?
It was amazing. Yeah, I got it. It was amazing. I'd never been on a base quite like that one. So I was down there, and again, it took me about 6 months to a year to really integrate with them. I passed a selection course, so it wasn't just like I went down there. It was basically had to do a selection course where 3 of us out of about 12, 15 people got in. And my military experience got me in. And then after that, my job started. It was understanding about the culture there. And they taught me as much as I taught them, because I went down with quite an attitude saying I was ex-forces. I know what I'm talking about. I could, but I'd never fought in a trench before like that.
Yeah.
They've been doing it for years. So they taught me pretty much everyone in Ukraine could fillet a fish, catch food, chop wood, build a fire. You know, we get wood from Tesco's and a petrol station in the UK, you know. We've lost that art. So they were teaching me about living off the land and how to catch rack and crayfish. And,
but you said you were interested in this when you were younger too,
absolutely,
right?
Yeah. So they would just teach me all about that. And I could teach them less reliance on electrical equipment, basic infantry skills, shooting at different ranges. That's where the bond really took. And
so if you don't mind me asking, what group did you join at this point? It was
initially I was an instructor with Azov, the reconnaissance and sniper units with Azov for 2 years.
Okay.
The only reluctance was the stigma attached to them, which once I'd met them and talked to them and understood what they were trying to do, it was described to me, it was like the French Foreign Legion in the early days. We just took for everybody with and give them guns, and we didn't get paid for it. We just had one common goal: get the Russians out. What they wanted to do was then streamline that down. A lot of the hardcore guys left. Yeah, there probably was far-right elements in it at the time, but there was a lot of elements at the time. But they wanted to become more professional, and that's where they sold that idea to me in 2018. It wasn't how the American media portrayed it. But after 2 years there, one of the best jobs I'd ever had, the laws changed. By that time, I was married, and really, the only place you could go is the Marines to do a 3-year contract and then get your permanent residency. As a volunteer, you can't. You need to be a citizen of National Guard, citizen to be in National Guard, which Azov is in, to do a 3-year contract. Well, I wasn't a citizen, but the only place I could go was the Marines. So it was quite a culture shock moving to the Marines and doing that in my mid-40s. Did I really want to go back to doing a 3-year contract with the military? Having been there, I understood the different standards of the military. There are good commanders and bad commanders, and do I want, and people went from the Marines to Azov, not backwards, because that was more prestigious and more money spent, and it's a better unit. So for me, going back to joining the Marines on a 3-year contract, which I thought at the end of it is pretty good. I'm pretty fit. The Azov made me super fit for my age. So I was ready to go. And then when I went there, I was thinking Marines, boats. They stuck me and they went, no, you'll be doing air assault. We're going to get you on our parachute and training, and you're going to be jumping out of Mi-8 helicopters. So I was just then going, oh, do I really want to be doing this at 40? My knees and my hips and all this. Best decision ever made. It's one of the first foreigners to pass all aspects of parachute training and jump as a Ukrainian soldier. I was jumping out of Mi-8 helicopters, did 9 jumps, 4 combat jumps, one of them at night. And then I was the first really foreigner, one of the first foreigners to pass the Marines Berry test, the grueling 10 kilometers assault course, stretch and run. And so I passed that. And that's where I got my name, Stary Sobaka, old dog.
Old dog, yeah.
Yeah. So slowly person Ukrainian.
Oh, yeah, I see your Twitter handle. It's like old dog, right?
Yeah,
I was like, okay, it makes sense now.
They'd see me running and we'd do like and then I'd be behind them and they'd go, oh, still here, old dog. I just still keep running, So it was like a compliment that stuck. So everywhere I went was Stary Sobaka.
What is the difference in doctrine between like maybe the UK and Ukraine?
A lot, to be honest. Firstly, the similarities that they're very motivated.
Let's talk about like maybe what Ukraine does well, the difference, and then also what they can improve on or something.
What they do well is they're very innovative. I'll give you an example. 3 days before the invasion, we got the NLAWs, the anti-tank weapons came. I was the only one that had ever fired original Law 94, some 30 years previous. That positively made me a Gandalf in anti-tank weapons.
Yeah.
But I found myself 4 days before the invasion, trying to PDF the new sight system I'd never seen.
PDF?
Yeah, just trying to get the system on Google. I've never seen the system, so trying to understand.
I thought this was a military term I wasn't familiar with. I'm like, okay, PDF.
No PDF. Yeah. Back to basics.
Okay.
Just sort of telling the guys, don't worry, it's going to be okay. It's fuck. Like shit. So I'm trying to sort of really understand the system myself, and so I'm able to teach the guys how to use it. And also my sergeant and my platoon commander were doing the same thing. So that was like 4 days before the invasion. They were very quick to pick that up, everybody. So nobody had any formal training in it. Nobody had been down the ranges and even fired one, but they were straight into it, in the battle, straight away. Nailed it pretty much, and it was a critical bit of kit at a critical time. So they're they can adapt very well to new weapon systems very quickly. And they just want to know. They're very inquisitive, very adaptable, very fit, very motivated. And because the war's in their own back garden, you've got something there the Russians don't have, which is will to fight. No money in the world can buy that. And that's what we try and tell people now. And that's what Ukraine has, why Ukraine will win. Because at the end of the day, if they don't, Russia still exists, Ukraine won't. The culture will go, everything will go. If they come into Ukraine, you probably won't see me again. And that's if I don't get out quick enough. So that's probably the realistic, what we are dealing with. Because I'm here. If they come in quick and take over the country, then you probably won't see the likes of me again, or Ada, or anybody else. They will be taken in, interrogated, tortured. Even if there's just a person of interest, you'll be tortured. You might not have even done anything wrong. Expat here, 60-year-old teacher for all your life here, teaching English. You're still going to be drawn in and tortured.
Yeah, you're a spy.
You're a spy, MI6.
Yeah.
They'll twist it. You won't be see them again. So this is why it's imperative we fight, because we all know this is going to happen if we lose.
Yeah. And, okay, so now I want to get to maybe the siege of Mariupol, but let me put, the pieces together. So you moved to Ukraine, then you joined Azov, and then you were in Mariupol. Then after that, you had to. Then you were an air assault person in which brigade or which
Marines first Battalion.
first
Yeah,
battalion? Okay.
Mykolaiv, 36th Brigade.
And then let's fast forward a little bit to February 24th, 2022. What were you doing that day?
This was my third or fourth routine deployment in Pavlopol, about 25, 30 minutes outside east of Mariupol. I had a house at that time on the left bank of Mariupol, which meant you could hear the artillery from Shirokina up to my positions in Pavlopol.
So just for the people at home, the left bank is the east side of the river.
The east side of the river,
okay.
yeah. Always the way the river
water flows,
flows. Yeah. So I was on the had a house, and it was just been rejuvenated. Mariupol. It changed in 5 years. When I got there was this old saying that if you hadn't had a child by the time you're 21, you're likely not to, because of the factories and all the smell of nickel and sulfur and all that stuff. Fast forward on 5 years later, the town had been redeveloped. There was loads of money being spent on it. It was very touristy. My wife was an activist who marched against the pollution for the factories, but they were the biggest employers in the area, that and the military. So, so it changed a lot in 5 years, but my house was literally, I could get a taxi to my position. I was home within 30 minutes if I was on R&R or rest recuperation. So I was home in 30 minutes. So it was about, this was my fourth tour on the front. So it was about defending my community, my home, my house, my stuff. I like my stuff.
And you were still active in the military on the first day of the invasion, right?
Yeah, I was on a routine deployment the first day of the invasion.
Did you think they were going to invade? Were you prepared for this scenario?
No, most Ukrainians didn't think it. They thought it would be, it would sort itself out. But for 2 weeks prior to the day of the invasion, we were already fighting. People don't realize that Russia had started its artillery bombardment on Telekivka, which is a village in between my position at Pavlopol and Mariupol.
Yeah, I didn't even know this. Yeah.
No, so they'd started 2 weeks before. So they intensified the artillery about 2 weeks before. Also, the technology changed. Yeah. So it wasn't like quad drones anymore and homemade drones. It was proper professional, fast-moving Lancet drones. They had the ability suddenly to drop ordnance at night, which meant they had thermal on their drones. I hadn't seen this in 5 years, really.
Why don't you think this was talked about on the news?
I do believe it was. It's just largely forgotten about. I mean, one of the reasons
I was watching news every day for like 2 weeks before the invasion, and even months after. I'd never heard anything like this because I was one of the people just like you. I didn't think they were going to invade.
No, I knew 2 weeks before. Once you start seeing the Zeds, and then the 2 weeks before the invasion, the world's press, over 5 years prior to that, we developed relationships with journalists from all over the world. So they were trying to get hold of us to get us to find out what was going on. But they were moving out of Mariupol to Dnipro, to safer. They were told by their people it's going to happen. They knew it was going to happen. They were advised to move out of Mariupol and go to safer Kiev, Dnipro, away from the front lines. So everybody knew about 2 weeks before, it's on. Mm-hmm. And I'd done enough stand twos, 13 years in the military, 9 war tours to know it's going to happen. And the old saying, you can't keep an army on the border doing nothing. Mm-hmm. Eventually they have to do something. So there's like 180,000 Russians on the border. Now it's like 200,000. Now there's 220,000. You just knew it was going to happen, but people were just had the blinkers on and denial mode. It's going to sort itself out. Even my wife wanted to spend $7,000 on a new kitchen in Mariupol. So, it was like, and she was sort of saying, thanks, Shaun, you made me look really stupid in your book. And I was like, but it happened, and it recreates the environment and situation.
So you were ready to fight, right? You kind of had more or less had an understanding that this might happen.
Even if I didn't want to fight, there was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize until 5 days after the invasion that we were at the tip of the spear. I'll explain, because on the initial day of the invasion, Russia had air superiority. So they were already taking out the phone masts. They were taking out the power grids. They were taking out anything, infrastructure, communications infrastructure, anything they were taking out. So straight away, your signal's gone. You don't get time to turn off your social media or anything like that, because you've got, it takes you 2 hours to get a text. The bars just go, and then you've got jamming on top of that. So your signal's gone. So all you're doing is just trying to fight your way out of the position you're in. waiting for the order to go. And that's what we did for the first day. It was just shock and awe. Dushka, air superiority, Grad, AGS.
And they were shelling the city directly after the first day? Or?
Straight away, yeah.
Straight
The
away,
planes were
wow.
coming in. By the time, it took us several days to get to Mariupol on their fighting withdrawal. And during that time, you could see plumes of smoke coming from Mariupol. You were coming into the bombing zones of the flight paths of the Russians.
Wow.
So they were not only just, hitting Telekivka, bombing it with artillery, they were using the planes to start their missions into Mariupol as well, straight from the word go.
Wow.
And also they were coming in from the Azov Sea. So we had a better standard of troops, the Marines coming in, the Russian Marines coming in.
Like in an amphibious landing.
Yeah, pretty much. They were trying to get in everywhere. I wasn't on there, so I can't really speak for that. All I can speak about is our fighting withdrawal back to Mariupol. But a friend of mine afterwards, who was on the coast, sort of said that the guys were a different breed. We were fighting really a mixture of ability. At one point I thought it must be Donetsk people, the militia or something, because they're not even bracketing or using their mortars correctly. They were quite happy spending 2 days firing at the same safe spot in front of us, which I thought we're dead now. Towards April, when it was all looking to end, I was thinking we're dead. All they're going to do is bring in the artillery and start bombing us and bracketing and then walking it onto the position. Nope. 2 days, they were just going through the motions, wasting all these rounds, just hitting this safe spot in the embankment, which told me either they didn't know what they were doing or they were just really weren't interested in, being there, or didn't know how to any basic tactics on how to use a mortar. So, but that on top of that, they were solely reliant on artillery and air power. So the whole sort of several weeks of defending Mariupol was really trying to avoid airburst rounds and artillery rounds and numerous Grad. Grad is just relentless. One cassette of Grad is bad enough. They were firing 2 on the position,
Wow.
and you're just dealing with that. And then you sort of, over that 7-week period, you're losing guys. 60%, 70% of my guys were caught with shrapnel. I was the only one of the only guys that really got out without a scratch. Everybody else, we'd lost Dima, Ivanov, a few others died in the opening days in Mariupol when we got to Illich Steelworks. Because what people don't realize is that Azovstal gets all the press, but there was Illich Steelworks at the north and then Azovstal at the bottom. We were at Illich Steelworks at the top. So protecting the H20 highway into Donetsk. So it's people don't realize that the Russians were solely reliant on air power and barrages of artillery. And once they encircled us, what they did then was try and encircle each steelworks and cut us off from each other. And eventually the positions became untenable after several weeks. We had no food, no water.
So what reached the breaking point so whereas you all had to surrender?
Well, we had good command and control all the way through up until sort of the first weeks in April. It started to crack. One of the battalions surrendered, didn't tell anybody, just disappeared. That left a big gap.
A battalion is how many people?
About 600 people.
600 people just surrendered. Wow.
Well, no. They were in there in a position and they were getting smashed by Russia. From what I heard, those 600 went down to 140 pretty quickly.
Oh, wow.
Ran out of ammunition. We were running out of ammunition, running out of food, running out of water because we were encircled. And I think it was the 501st eventually just called time. And that left a massive gap in our right flank. And when that gap really did materialize, the Russians just poured through it. And they were taking up positions that we formerly held at the start. Then it became like the end of Saving Private Ryan. It was 30-meter fights. Other side of walls, we could hear them talking.
Oh, wow.
They were bringing tanks in, blowing holes in walls so that their troops can sort of wiggle their way through. Anti-tank weapons. It was close street fighting at the end, which we then knew we were on borrowed time. We I was on the extremities, so I didn't have a bunker or anything. I was out in the open. So, if you'd avoided the Grad and the shrapnel winging around from the artillery and the mortars, once the tanks started to roll in, you had the drones coming off, just picking people off in the trenches. We were just running out of people. So command and control was generally pretty good up until sort of the second week in April. We really did start to crumble at that point. And we were starting to ask questions about, how long we're going to be here. And that's when I believe I learned afterwards that Zelensky said, make your way to friendly lines or negotiate surrender, we can't get to you. And by that time, the encirclement...
How did you find that out?
When I was exchanged. I didn't know at the time.
Okay.
My platoon commander at the time just sort of said, we're going. I was like, thank God for that. I don't want to be here anymore. We can't hold this position. But we'd held out for several weeks. So it was good that we were making a decision. Wherever we were going to go had to be better than staying put. We were just getting smashed.
And how do you surrender to the enemy?
Well, I didn't. I'd started to prepare to escape an evasion. My platoon commander said, we are not surrendering. We are going to try and get out, which I was all for. I didn't want to surrender. Being a Brit, my Russian is good, but I still speak with a Cockney accent. So I'm from London. I can't escape that. I was never going to get through tactical questioning. I could never pass myself as being a Ukrainian. So I had to come up with different scenarios. I was always going to try and get out. That was your own personal choice. So I decided to try and break out, prepare an escape and evasion maybe a couple of days before April the 13th, when it did happen. Started to save a bit of food, strip down my gear. What do I need? Which routes am I going to take? Trying to find out where I was, map everything together and I was one of the only guys that never had any training in this. You've got to remember that most of the guys in my platoon, this was their first operation, Mariupol. Most of them, Ukrainian training wasn't, you touched on earlier, wasn't the best training. We did a bit of medical stuff. We did some shooting maybe twice a year. We ran all the time. That was amazing with super fit guys. Yeah. But they did signals training, communications training, survival resistance. They did no training like that. So I was probably 1% knew what was going to happen, that you have to if you're going to get captured, you've got to get through that first stage of being captured, because that's the most dangerous.
Why is it the most dangerous?
Well, the unpredictability. Okay. You might have, because you're in the fight still, you might have killed 6 dozen of their friends. So it's the strongest time that you're more likely to get shot or killed. So if you get through that, the chances are that your life expectancy is going to increase. So it was always about, well, if I get captured or cornered, I'm going to have to surrender to a Russian officer. That would be the best option. I can't get through tactical questioning, so I'm going to have to say things like, I'm English, in my best Russian, and then in English to say I'm English. Maybe that'll get them on the back foot. Maybe they'll think I'm worth something, and they'll be able to get, I'd have some value. So I started to think about these things, about the way forward and how I'm going to get out. But when the day of the evacuation happened, we got ambushed on the way out, and the Russians, for 40 minutes, we drove out in these Mad Max vehicles that were being prepped a couple of weeks before. They looked like commands vehicles with steel plates on the side. But what happens, we had all these plans and seating arrangements and how we're going to get out, where we're going to go. But on the day we were going to go, unfortunately, it got cancelled. Some Russian vehicles were on our main route out. We couldn't get out, so we were going to do it the next night. Unfortunately, this night was foggy. It was amazing. It was like mist, tuman, and everywhere. And unfortunately, the next night we went, but as day broke, it turned out to be one of the best days that Ukraine had all winter. So we'd fought all the way through the winter. Minus 28 was the worst conditions we'd been in. So by April, it was still really, really cold. But we were starting to get the first shouts of spring. And this day was, unfortunately, even the weather gods were against us. So started with the air superiority. They saw us go in about 3 o'clock in the morning on April the 13th. This was our second attempt trying to break out. And then the platoon got split because it was dark. We went everywhere. And then, but we also took the hospital and the casualties these guys couldn't walk. But they, understandably, they wanted to leave. So all our plans beforehand just went to crap. So I ended up helping a transport officer to a safer. He had been hit by shrapnel, was injured. So I helped him to an area, lost my platoon, and then had to make the decision what I was going to do. Stay with them or go and find my platoon.
So who are you with at this point? How many people?
Well, there was probably about 5 or 6 people in the end. We just found injured people, people that were stretchers who couldn't move in buildings. So
instead of making your own escape, you decided to stay and like help people, right?
Help this guy, and then my problem multiplied, because I wasn't just with this guy and a medical sergeant. I was then coming across more injured, more casualties. Casualties in buildings.
Like civilians, right?
So, no, all military.
All military.
All military. So this ambush was just, people were getting hit everywhere. It was just mortars, artillery. I have video footage of it that I used for a presentation, and it's just intense. The column's just getting hit. So we're literally spread out everywhere over the four winds. So I had to make a decision, one of the hardest decisions I made. Do I stay with them? But she was a medic with an orderly, was far more qualified to deal with these. Nobody had life-threatening injuries, and I was still in all my gear, not a scratch on me. So I made a decision, go find my platoon or try and get back to friendly lines. And I had to just say, I'm off. And she sort of understood. And then after 2 hours of navigating my way out of trying to
Did you ever
navigate.
understood what became of her?
Yeah, I do. I've spoken to her after. She was exchanged.
Okay,
she was
nice.
also used in
That's good
a
news.
testimony at my trial to say that I was a member of an active fighting unit in Mariupol. They used her for that. So we had, I bumped into a lot of these people after. There's no hard feelings. It's just the game that Russia want to play. There's nothing you can do. And she didn't lie. She just, I wouldn't want her to lie.
And so you're on the way out right now, right? You decided to leave?
Yeah, 2 hours it took for them to really, I was trying to break the first line and find my platoon. And also I decided that I couldn't get to the location where they wanted me to get to, because by that time the ambush had happened. There was now small arms fire. Didn't know where the Russians were. So I decided to just try and find my way through buildings, because it was like Heathrow Airport. Now, I mean, you can't imagine. There's so many drones. By the end of it, there was drones coming in 10 feet above the ground, looking in through windows and doors. The only place I'd ever seen this was the Terminator film, the original one.
Yeah.
It was just, but when I first joined the army, we didn't even have phones. Now we've got these things coming in, looking through windows and doors, trying to find you, to call in artillery onto the position, or maybe bomb, FPV drone straight into your position. So, this was all starting to, you had to sort of navigate your way through these buildings and trying to avoid the drones that were constantly looking for you.
Yeah.
And it was about 2 hours outside Mariupol where I was then.
2 hours north, you would say? Or
no,
west?
we're northwest.
Northwest, okay.
Yeah, northwest. I knew I had to get to Zaporizhzhia, and I might bump into my platoon. I knew they were nearby, which is really sad, because when I was exchanged, one of the things I did was make my weapons safe, unload my gear, and start to get past. I knew I couldn't do 200 kilometers with all this gear. You imagine doing body armor, helmet, 8 magazines. I had 25 Vogs, like 40 millimeter grenades, a rifle, boots, body armor. I'm never going to get, I've not eaten for 7 weeks, no water, no food. So water was critical. I had to go and find one. I was never going to do it with all that weight.
Yeah.
And all the spare ammo, because I had the PKM2. I had like 200, 300 link in my rucksack. So all that had to go. I was never going to do 200 kilometers with that. And my war had finished. It's one of the hardest things to do, is to leave your personal weapon. But you have to be rational. My war's done. The position's folded.
Yeah.
I've got to get back now. And I'm not going to be able to do it with all this gear. And what's the point of me having a weapon now? So initially put it down, packed it all nicely in this garage I found underneath this thing. And when my platoon commander was exchanged with me, when he came around, he said, "We found your stuff." I went, "What?"
Wow.
He must have been so close. We must have been like this all the way through, trying to get out of Mariupol, that they found my gear. So we were hearing stories like this afterwards, trying to catch up with life after. But about 2 hours outside of Mariupol, I was captured by DPR forces. I literally thought I'd broken through the first line.
But how did they capture you? You were just walking. You didn't have any of your equipment
there was a
on
shot. I'd like to think it was a warning shot, but I don't know. I think, but I managed to. It sort of whisked past my shoulder, and then I managed, as you sort of instinctively look for where the shots come from. And as I got down, I could see like 6 to 8 bods in the bottom of this sort of in front of a wall, but next to a wooded area.
Yeah.
And I could see they were dug in, and I literally was going over the crest of a hill. So as I went over the crest, this shot rang past. So I had to make a decision then, and I took my phone. So the first thing I did was I dropped my phone in some runoff water. It was like at 3 feet of water. Been raining really heavily for a couple of weeks beforehand. So there was a flood water. So I managed to watch my phone just sink in there. I thought they're in close proximity. You need it. If I didn't have a radio, so if I was going to get to friendly lines, I needed to let somebody know I was coming in. So I knew I had to take it with me, but I understood the intelligence on that. So I made sure that was going. I also made sure that I snapped my credit cards, because what the Russians tend to do is they take your hostage, then they'll march you to an ATM and get you to take all your money out your bank. So again, I lived in Ukraine to know these stories, hear these stories, understand what I need to do.
That's so smart to think about it while you're under short.
I had a couple of days preparing for the escape and evasion. So I'd snap those cards like in Mariupol and started to clear things off my phone. I knew I needed my phone, and started to go through the intel in my pockets and think, that don't need that anymore, don't need that anymore. So it had like a few days, and that's all my training from the British Army preparing me for that. Don't get caught with your phone. Don't get caught with. So I kept I kept cash that I might need, because you have to, you might be able to get some food or water or something, and give some money to somebody to give some water. And then I jumped my phone because they were so close, nearly 30 meters away. I literally walked into the position, and then I've got to make a decision. And that's the bit I had to talk. Certainly don't regret it now. I was in open ground in broad daylight, trying to go from what was a low-level part of the village to a higher part, and there was a bit of and I was caught on the only bit of dead ground between one building to another. And if I'd have turned around and run, they had the high ground, they would probably cut me down. As far as I was concerned, it seemed like a warning shot. So if I just turned around and run, maybe they'd cut me down, and I didn't really have a choice. They were that close. I didn't have anywhere to run, really.
How did you surrender, though? You just put your hands up?
Everything I planned. Just was behind the hill and just said, I'm English, in my best Russian. And then said in English, I'm English, don't shoot. And then...
And they're just 30 meters away, you said?
30 meters. And then they start calling me over. I could hear them calling me over. So
in Russian, right?
Sort of no, Russian. I started lifting my head up, and then I could see him going, come here. So I was like, okay. And then you have to do that 30-meter death walk, where anything can happen.
And so you're just walking with your hands up,
hands
backwards
up,
or forward?
doing everything they're saying, walking with their hands up. And then you're just walking towards them, just praying that one of them doesn't get a...
And all of them have their guns drawn at you, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And then as you get close, you start to see that there's shell scrapes, and they're dug in on top of a hill. And it's very difficult to break the first line, because, one, if you're trained up, every soldier's in every bit of dead ground and every wood line, and using the strategic positions. I don't have the luxury of a drone to see ahead of me. So it's very difficult to break that first line. However, 12 people did get back to
when you were walking over there, to them, when they said, come here, did you think that you were going to die? They were just going to shoot you?
I'd accepted several times before that day that I could have died. I lost my best friend Dima, a good friend there, Ivanov. The first day of the invasion, they said they'll be in Ukraine and conquer Ukraine in 3 days. On day 4, I was like, well, that's not going to happen. We're still fighting. And for 7 weeks, we largely defended Mariupol. So, every day was just trying to get through the day for several weeks, just trying to survive the day.
And you came to grips with you might die, and
if it's going to happen now, it's going to happen. Okay. And I understood that I had some value as well. If they had any sense, they would understand I had some value, which is why I just sort of said it's a bit of a double-edged sword. One, you're probably going to get more of a beating knowing you're English, but you've got some value. And that's an assessment I had to make at the time that really sort of paid off.
Yeah, you're like a trophy.
Yeah, a trophy, yeah. Paint myself to be a trophy. And when I got there, it wasn't too bad up until the point they took me to a company position. I wasn't captured.
Well, just explain it like step by step. So you surrender, you walk to them. Do they say something to you, or you just directly march you somewhere?
No, first thing they asked me if I spoke Russian. I said, yeah, I speak a little bit. I understood a little bit, but I'm from England. They want my ID. I give them my passport and my military ID, which I had in my pocket. And there's this old saying that you just got name, rank, and number, and that's it. That's all you give, the big 4, and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work like that. It's crap, to be honest. Firstly, the guys don't really speak English, so there's a lot of Ruskies.
How do these guys look like? Just typical Russian people, or just?
I don't know whether you know the British TV series In-Betweeners.
In-Betweeners,
no, it's about a group of kids at school. It's just like that. I mean, it was like referred to in the book as the In-Betweeners. They were like 90, 20-year-olds. Some of them didn't even have proper beards. It was like fluff, and they had one central guy who was seasoned, who knew what he was doing, who could control this rabble. And Then I knew I was captured by DPR forces. They had white tape. They were mismatched. They looked like a militia. They didn't look like conventional. They weren't in Russian fatigues. They were in MTP here and British DPM
and just for people
here.
at home, Donetsk People's Republic is DPR.
DPR, yeah, Donetsk People's Republic. So I knew straight away who I'd been captured by. I mean, they didn't look like a proper fighting unit. They looked like a mismatch of everything.
And their gear was
just like rigs looked like from Toys R Us, and they had World War II helmets on and striving, and this guy looking like just completely gone out like that, looking at me. And the only guy that had any sense was the sergeant. But then they just started to mug me. So straight away they were into my watch, my Condor cap, and what I didn't realize at the time was that while I thought I'd prepared quite well, what I didn't realize was that all my stuff was like eye candy. It was like I had Pixel, but I had ripstop Pixel, the good stuff, waterproof, with the knee pads, and I had a Condor helmet, a Garmin, and you just sit there and think, oh shit.
Yeah, they're gonna fight over all your equipment. Yeah.
Straight away they're gonna go, you're special forces, because I got gear on, lower boots that most Ukrainian people that have been constant or were in the military don't have. I mean, you get paid less than $400 a month before the war. You can't buy lowers and £800 Garmins and things like that. So already I was thinking, I didn't see that one coming, buffalo fleece and cargo belt. And straight away they're into me going, these special forces is someone of interest. Not just a Brit, but look at the gear he's got.
Yeah.
So already they were just taking stuff off me. I'd kept a light and a knife just in case I needed that and things like that. Where's your phone? I said, I don't have a phone. And then they took me back to this company position. And after just really a mugging, is what I call it, it was then really the experience, the POW experience really kicked in. They hooded me then and bound my hands with masking tape, that yellow tape behind my back. And once they'd done that, then they started to work me over. Not before, but after they'd hooded me and bound my hands.
Yeah, so they were just beating you.
Yeah, just beating me. And
just
then
like hitting you on the face with their
yeah,
weapons,
one guy just sort of lifted up my hood to check my face and just stopped me right around the cheeks. And then the commander came and sort of, there was a bit of a lull. And then he said, where's your phone? And I said, I don't have one. It was blown up because I was blown up in Mariupol by a train IED of all things. So a huge explosion, but I used this excuse to say my phone had been damaged. I don't have it. And he said, why do you have a charger then? And I was like, and that was another kick in, because I was trying to go, I haven't got a phone. I had to stick with my guns, not change it, to say I don't have a phone. It was just, I kept my charger in my bag and I did have it, but it's blown up. And then he sent somebody back to go and look for it, 5 and 25 meter checks. And I was sitting there thinking, they're going to find it, they're going to find it, they're going to find it. And that's when the Russians turned up.
How can you tell the difference?
Well, they were the real deal. I mean, they didn't have patches on for stars, which means they were trying to hide who they were. They turned up with fast helmets, gangster grips, really good optics, good weapons, pressed Russian fatigue combats, a slightly lighter color than the green one, but still Russian fatigues. They looked at, and I just thought, Spetsnaz have just turned up. Either Spetsnaz, FSB, or some sort of military police units turned up. But they had chem lights, and it was a dead giveaway that these guys were the real deal. And as soon as one guy started questioning me, the other guy came around and stabbed me in the leg, literally, which told me, hindsight afterwards, that they were probably trained, because in SEER they teach you to, if you're going to escape, the best chance of escaping is between A and B. Because once you get to B, it's very difficult to get out. There's more guards, more walls, more barbed wire. You're probably not going to get out. So they knew that. So they just wanted to stop me from escaping. So give me a 3-inch knife wound into my leg.
In your calf or your thigh?
In my thigh, side of my thigh. And then that was really to stop me from going anywhere. And then obviously I was screaming and thinking I wasn't expecting that. And then they took me to like a 40-minute drive to like a tiled room. And this place was just built for torture. It was like a white tiled wet room floor with a hole in the middle, which is to drain the blood. And, I'd done enough security briefs in Bosnia and working out there with the UN to say, if you end up in this house, then the chances of you getting out of this house are pretty slim. And they'd show pictures of this place. Well, now I was in that house and I was just thinking, Oh, I knew exactly what was coming here straight away. So I was bleeding everywhere. They'd managed to, they then put a blue T-shirt and some sellotape around as a pressure bandage, not even a proper bandage, but just to stop the bleeding, while then promptly sat me down in a chair, strapped me to a chair, put paddles on my fingers and started electrocuting me, which was before they'd even said a word. So, you know, it's literally tie your hands and your feet to the front legs of a chair, and then literally you can feel the paddles just being put onto your fingers. And once you've had one, it's debilitating, because one, you can't do anything about it. There's no screams. You can hear everything, the electrical current in your ear. You can't scream because everything's clamped shut. Nobody's touching you. Everything just goes quiet, but you just can't do anything. And then when it sort of turns off, you just slump in the chair, dribbling everywhere, and your arms twitching because of the aftershocks, and really heavy electric shock, which I believe they kept using the connotation, do you want to phone home? Which then I thought it's a TAPIC, which is, for those that don't know, TAPIC is the Ukrainian word for a field phone that's portable. Yeah. You can shun it. It's in every trench line. You run a cable for it. You wind it up, create electrical current, and it ding-a-lings at the other end. Well, they use that as a form of quite a mobile torture weapon. So next time he said, "You want to phone home?" I was like, "No," you know. Yeah. And the laugh and the joke about it is the gallows humor, is the way you deal with it.
Yeah, of course.
It's throughout the book you'll see that.
So what else do they do to you down there? They taped you up. They give you electric shocks. Did they talk to you down there, or they were just trying to torture you?
Technical questioning was really, really, really different. It was not like I thought it was going to be. There was no where are your friends, or, you know, Gestapo type sort of questioning. It was more like one guy started screaming at me, shouting Condoleezza Rice, and I was just like, what? And he's screaming at me, going, Condoleezza Rice, the Black Witch of America. America's kept us down. And I was like, I'm British. I'm not American. And it's like, no. Condoleezza Rice, you do what we tell you. And there was one guy that could speak a bit of English, but there was I had like 3 interrogators, kicking, punching, in between the electric shocks. So there was one guy came in who gave me a mock execution, just pushed me down while I was strapped to the chair, just pushed me down, cocked his weapon, pushed it down, and then just left it dragging, and that's it. I made my peace with God. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. Nothing. And I think from really that point, I started to realize I might have some value, because he didn't pull the trigger. Yeah. Because as long as I could get through this, I could hear people saying, "No, we're moving him on. Bring the car." So I knew I was going somewhere else. I knew that if I didn't die of a heart attack, then I'd probably get through this first stage with.
Were they feeding you? And how first of all, how many days has it been since you surrendered to this day where they're mock executing you?
Same day. So same day? Oh, 13, yeah. So 2 hours I was trying to get out of Mariupol. Then they captured me. And then that same day I was taken to this room and electrocuted, stabbed in the leg. And then I was driven for a 2 or 3 hour drive to Donetsk, which is then I knew I would get the good cop, bad cop treatment. It hadn't changed in 30 years. I knew at some point I would meet the guy I would be looking to rely upon. Yeah. My social worker, as he was introduced to me.
You can tell me
everything. I knew this, yeah. You can tell me anything. I'm going to look after you and make sure you're all right. Generally, it was a bit like that, a bit cliche, but it was very much still that same sort of initialization phase. This is the worst you get. As long as you help us, you won't get that again. Yeah. But by that time, I'd been electrocuted 2 or 3 more times. Couldn't even verbally speak, dribbling in my own sort of dribble, bleeding out in the back of their car because they hadn't treated my leg. And so they took me to Donetsk, and that's where my sort of imprisonment really started.
And how long were you in prison for?
Several months. So I was captured on April the 13th and released on the 22nd of September. And
what did they feed you? What was the diet like?
Well, it's I was in 2 different prisons. So initially I was at what we call a black site, which is an unregistered site. The reason I know it's a place where all the nasty stuff happens, finding out who you are. Because when I was taken to trial, my court, on my indictment paper, it said the 19th of April. Well, I was captured on the 13th. For that period of time, I was at this, that's the dangerous time. I could have been killed and nobody would have known. Because at the black site, I was gone for those days, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So I was gone. And that's where I was electrocuted on the ear, told to write an autobiography, beaten to a pulp, and then told that I would only have bread for the next 60 days, because I'd lied on my autobiography that I didn't put on there I was a sniper instructor with Azov, because I knew if I'd mentioned Azov, I could have been shot on the front line.
Yeah,
you know what they're like. So I didn't put that, but they found out about that later on, so I had to take that. So they electrocuted me on the ears. And then for the next 60 days, I had bread every now and again. I was pulled out for propaganda. My testimonies were taken under duress. So
I've seen pictures of you in captivity. You're so skinny, man.
I didn't eat. Most I did eat was 3 or 4 days in one sort of row. I had to then beg. We were pulled out for a lot of propaganda, so I had to sort of really exploit those situations. So I knew they would videotape me eating a burger, but we just weren't getting any food. So I would sort of start with a cigarette, then some bottled water, and then I haven't eaten for 2 days, because they were pretty skeptical and sketchy around their own press. So then I had to sort of really mitigate that and sort of say, look, I know they're going to video. I want to get on TV, was my sole aim. I want to tell the world I'm here. I'll do anything to get on TV. I was the biggest cigarette whore this side of Moscow, I'm telling you, because I just wanted to get on TV. And part of that was my training was that if I get on TV, I need to be as boring as possible. I need to show my conditioning that I was in, that I was deteriorating, my injuries that I'd got, various things. But I knew that had to come at an exchange.
Yeah.
So if I was to get on TV, I needed to, first of all, if you're ever going to get mentally out of a situation like that, you really need to say, I did a good job. And so there's a lot of principles you need. Don't crap on your mates. Be sparing with information, be a bit clever with it, but be as close to the truth as possible if you're going to have a cover story. One was manufactured for me. I didn't do it. They did. They just thought I was an old guy. Stary Subaka. So they didn't realize. I didn't push me on my army background, whether I knew how much Russian I knew, except for one leading interrogator who just refused to translate because he knew that I'd been trained. And I didn't see him after sort of 3 or 4 weeks. So he was the only real problem I had, because he pinged me straight away. But the rest of them just thought I was this old guy who married a Ukrainian, who was just in the military for love, because he's a sad old boy. But they didn't realize my background. So it was about hiding that and helping the weaker members of that were captured that we met later on.
And then you had a trial, right?
Yeah.
In DNR.
We did. We had a trial, and on the June, I believe it was, around the 9th of June, we were told that we would go on trial. We was only told that morning. We were signing indictment papers on the Friday, and by Monday we were in the courtroom. Nobody told us to get ready for that. And then within 2 days, we'd got the death sentence.
Within 2 days?
Within pretty much 2 days, yeah. They read our trials.
So when the trial was going on, do they bring forward evidence, or they just see your face and they go...
No, they manufactured.
Okay,
for one thing, we were doing PR. So they were trying to get initially Britain to be responsible for us. We were Ukrainian soldiers. We were never expecting Britain to acknowledge the Donetsk People's Republic. They don't deal with terrorists. They don't deal with puppet states. We knew that, and we kept telling them that. But they still would get us to ring the Foreign Office and still get us to ring home. And one call, my mum said, we've sent all your documents to the Russian embassy. We've sent all your contracts. We sent your marriage certificate. You're married to a Ukrainian. You're not mercenaries. We've sent it all to... They just ignored it all.
Wow.
We weren't allowed to ring to get evidence to defend ourselves. The statements that they used for the trial were in that 7-day period where we were electrocuted on the air, beaten to a pulp. We weren't eating for 60 days. My weight had dropped to 60 kilograms. You could see from when I was first captured to the trial, the deterioration.
No, I've seen the photos,
in that. And that's because we weren't being given any food. So even the prosecutor, the Russian prosecutor said, you don't look like your social media pictures, we're going to move you. So just before the trial, they moved us to another prison at Makivka.
Makivka, okay.
Makivka, 97.
Okay, so this is after you were
97.
sentenced to death, right?
Yeah.
You went to Makivka.
No, just before it, so they could fatten us up for the trial, because we'd be on the media.
Yeah.
So literally we went the next week we were on trial. So we'd had like 2 or 3 days of kasha, and a few bits of fish and some bread. That was my first meal. And then I became really ill. I got dysentery because we'd not eaten for 60 days.
Yeah.
I became very ill with the first bit of food we had. I became really, really ill. Because I'd had 7 weeks of fighting and then 60 days of just bread every now and again with an occasional burger that they would film me eating, much like the camera there.
Yeah.
I'd be sitting going, oh, this is amazing. Yeah, we're looking after you. Yeah, you're looking after us. This is amazing. And then you go to the trial and you're like, your back's going into your legs, your ribs are showing.
Yeah. And
coming to terms when you first see a mirror and you go, oh, I look really bad. It's another hurdle you have to really get over. So we were deteriorating really badly. John, by this time, another Brit had pneumonia. And a cracked sternum. The Swedes that was captured in Azovstal, they broke his leg. So he had a broken ankle. So, we were all up again. And then during that captivity as well, Paul Yuri was killed by the Russians, beaten so badly that he died of his injuries 2 days later. And he was a Brit NGO who was just there working with a charity. So, it's you have to deal with all those different aspects and keep going.
So when did you so you were sentenced to death? When did you know that you were going to be involved in a prisoner exchange? You were sent to Russia?
Didn't know.
You didn't know?
No.
You just one day they sent you to Saudi Arabia?
We were literally after the trial, they left me in a cell for about 2.5 months, which is a new set of pressures, self-induced pressures. That's probably the worst. Starvation's the worst form of torture by far. And then the next thing is self-induced pressures can be far more worse than system-induced pressures, because you're on your own a lot. If you can't control the thoughts going in your head,
you go
then
crazy. Yeah.
You can end up in down a bad path. So it was about being able to control those thoughts, keeping the group together, positivity within the group. And by the end of it, we were becoming like the Great Escape. We were starting to hatch plans and formulate a way to fight back, and what you would expect us to do as prisoners of war. But by this time, we weren't prisoners of war. We were then changed to hostages. So it was about, what value they could get for us. And by that time, we would just constantly be told we would be shot. They would send out bullets charge our families for the bullets, and ridiculous things like that. Brahim, the Moroccan, was quite a good guy. He was solid all the way through.
Yeah, I read the articles. So it was you, typically on these articles, it was you, Aiden, and this Moroccan guy.
Brahim Sadoun, the Moroccan, yeah. And he was quite a really interesting chap, solid. But he made it out fine? Yeah, okay, he's in Morocco. We talk quite a lot still. Okay. And it does seem like another lifetime ago. So, it's very much... we keep a group together on Telegram to make sure we're all okay, make sure nobody's suffering. And
we're running a bit short on time, but I want to talk about several topics with you. So you didn't know that you were going to be involved in a prisoner exchange, right? So how did this work? You just one day you woke up and they're saying we're going to Saudi Arabia.
They just said we're going on a long journey, and then from 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We were told to pack up our stuff until 10 o'clock in the next morning. We were put on the back of a vehicle, beaten to a pulp. Stress positions, told that we weren't allowed water. By the time I got
by the Russian soldiers, right?
By the Russian soldiers, yeah. And by the time we got to Rostov-Don, my face was bleeding where they'd rammed me into a door. One of the Americans we was exchanging with, his face had blown up because they'd strapped the hood with sellotape too tight to his head, and he couldn't see. His eyes were like pin slots.
Do you remember his name?
Alex Druk.
Yeah,
Druk. Yeah, he's another one. And his eyes were like pins, like slots. You couldn't see it. It looked like Homer Simpson. 3 of the guys lost footwear in the scuffles. So we was in a really bad way at Rostov-Don. And then it was only when the doors shut in the plane that they said, providing we can get a Russian airspace, you'll be free. So at that point, we just, the elation. You saw the guys get exchanged yesterday, and the guy just comes out the vehicle, just burst into tears on the floor.
Yeah.
And I'm able to sit there and be able to remember that particular time, and all the feelings and all the anger and all the happiness come through you at the same time. And you can't really explain to someone that doesn't know that what that feeling is. To feel the air in prison, you don't feel the wind, you don't feel the rain, you don't feel the sun, all you feel is concrete for months, 2 years. The guy's probably been starved, not felt any wind, any sun, and to finally be home, all that emotion. We was like that.
Yeah. Wow.
1 minute I was here, next minute I was down here, next minute I was here, the elation, and then I was like, oh, I'm home. And then we went to Riyadh, which again was, we met Roman Abramovich on the plane, which was quite strange. And I just said, you look like Roman Abramovich. He said, I am Roman Abramovich. So what are you doing here then? And then he explained the story really of, how he was involved in our exchange. And Ukraine got a really good deal out of it. 155 people, 10 foreigners for 55 Russians and Viktor Medvedchuk.
Yeah. How does it feel being exchanged for Viktor Medvedchuk?
Somebody said to me, it's the only good thing he's ever done. so, if you get that from Ukrainian, I was like, well, that's a good deal. I did hear some horror stories, of an Israeli being swapped for a thousand Palestinian terrorists, and they were telling me these stories where the exchanges don't go too well, where then the people are going, why did we do that? And I was thinking, never really thought about that. So I was really happy that at the end of the day, that Ukraine got a good deal out of the exchange. And, Roman Abramovich, he's got a lot of bad press, and a lot of people, quite rightly attack him for being Russian and his loyalties to Putin and stuff. Yeah. But generally, there's 150 families that are now talking to their loved ones again, and especially 10 foreigners. And, there's a lot of rich people that don't do anything to protect their wealth, don't even take part in anything. So, I am grateful to the Prince of Saudi Arabia and Roman Abramovich, and even to a point that somebody saw sense to exchange us, and didn't shoot us, which I still say if Viktor Medvedchuk wasn't captured, we might not have been here today. So I have no problem thinking they would have shot us. So it wasn't, we didn't get given given back under, for good graces of the Russians. They wanted to give, they exchanged us. We were hostages at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's the way you have to look at it.
I remember earlier in this podcast, you were saying that, your wedding photo, there's, 60% of the people, they're no longer with you, or they're taken hostage. And I remember you wanted to talk about, the current POWs right now.
Yeah,
because it's very important for you, especially what you've been through.
It is. You have to. I speak to a mum. One of the guys I met in prison was I didn't serve with him, but I speak to his mum. And one of the things we did in prison was remember each other's phone numbers. It was religious. What else did we have to do? So I remembered his mum's phone number. So the minute I was exchanged, I rang her and said, you don't know me. My wife rang her, and it was so emotional. Wow. Because my wife had to do this. She didn't speak a word of English. So I needed to make my point across really, really well. So my wife rang this woman, and she was silent at the end of the phone, crying for 5 minutes. And I was thinking, have I done the right thing? And now we've become best friends, because he's still in prison 2.5 years later. And it's really important.
What's his name?
I don't want to say. Sorry. Yeah, I can't really say at the moment. But it's really important that that we raise the situation in those prisoners, because some of them will not make it a third year, that because of the lack of food, because of the treatment, because no humanitarian aid group really says anything about the treatment of prisoners. And I know it's very intertwined in the fact that prisoners are being released, but look at the state of them. I mean, it looked like Japanese war camp prisoners from the 40s. I mean, they're not being fed, One of my friends has already died in captivity. The guy I talked about earlier, the transport officer who we helped to the building, he didn't have life-threatening injuries. He was injured, he had shrapnel in his leg, and he died in captivity. How? You've got to ask how that happened. So we've got to keep that, the POWs in the public eye. They don't really get a fair amount of press. because of the fact I think people are worried about upsetting the exchange process. But, why? We've got to keep asking the questions. Why the UN? Firstly, why the UN Security Council? How on earth is Russia chairing this? Why are they chairing it? Because, look at the bombing of the hospital. This is not just an isolated case. The theatre, the maternity hospital, Mariupol, Donetsk Children's Hospital. They're hitting these hospitals. So how can the Russian Federation be chairing and talking and criticizing other countries about the UN Charter? They're breaching all the Geneva Conventions.
They're just a bunch of liars, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they lie about everything.
Breaching the Geneva Conventions. So, one of the things I talk about is RT. Their torture of prisoners. Their torture of me. RT are just a mouthpiece for Russia.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I want to ask you as well. Say if there's somebody watching and they are really inspired, about what you're talking about in this podcast, especially this POW situation. What can they do to help if they wanted to help?
Well,
average person.
If you want to help, not necessarily just with POWs, I tell people don't come if you can't speak the language, especially now because you're just going to be a hindrance. If you can't speak Russian or Ukrainian, don't bother coming. It's very difficult unless you have a translator working with you 24/7 to get anything done. You don't understand the culture. So I get a lot of people text me saying, I want to do what you do. And I'm like, it's not cool what we did. It's this was my life. I wasn't a war junkie or a war tourist. I was married to Ukrainian. I'd lived here. And largely by not choices of my own, I was captured and lucky enough to get out of Mariupol alive, let alone be captured and get home before most of my guys are still there 2 years later. So what we do, firstly, don't come here thinking that it's going to change your life because you're just going to bring all your problems at home here. So as well, many people text me, my life is really bad at home. I want to help Ukraine. I want to come to Ukraine. First thing I say is, why is your life at home? Why is your life bad at home? It's going to be even worse here if you don't understand the culture. So don't come.
Well, is there any other capacity besides fighting that they can help in? Maybe they can contact their elected official. Maybe they can... Again,
contact elected official. There are Ukrainian charities within your own countries. Liaise with them. Liaise with the Ukrainian embassy. They will guide you to these charities and work with those charities. You can even, sponsor people here. Raise money for vehicles we need. You can do far more in your own country than you could probably do here, to be fair. If you want to come here, then come with an organised charity, drive some vehicles over, start breaking it in slowly. Don't just come and move here with your family. One person wanted to bring his wife here and stuff. I was like, no, I don't think that's really a good idea. It's an active war zone, So, there's lots of ways you can help in that way. And also run charity. I run help Ukrainian with Brave You Fund. We deliver non-military aid to people and orphanages. We just gone to an orphanage in Dnipro, delivered generators into there. So there's lots of charities that I could guide people on, that I know where the money's being spent at ground level. So I can always direct people that way. And also you can do your homework and find those charities. And also you have to be careful of scammers and all these people that unfortunately use the war for their own personal gain. So, you've got to do your homework. Don't give your money to just anybody. But yeah, Brave You is another one that I do a lot of work for in Kiev. So
at the end of the podcast, you could plug all these charitable organizations that so people can be aware, and we'll link them on the description. But what I want to ask, to kind of start wrapping this up, what is your life like now?
Well, it's changed considerably. I'm here talking to you for one thing. I do this as a living. I use my experience of what I, see a resistance training. I'm now able to come at another angle and help NATO troops and Ukrainians to deal with, being captured, best chances of survival, being able to advise on that. Also, writing a book, give me a platform now to be able to shed light on our story, not just Ukrainians, but, an English guy who was a Ukrainian Marine fighting in Ukraine and was married to a Ukrainian whose life and home was in Mariupol. It's a bit of a unique aspect, but that, because I'm English, gives me a platform to talk about Mariupol. And when 20 Days in Mariupol came out, that was just amazing. Because that just added to what I wrote about in the book. This was just amazing footage. and advise everybody to watch that because, about Putin. We could talk all day about Putin's narrative. He's got like 500 different narratives of invading Ukraine, which have all
we can also talk about Star Wars and Star Trek if you want.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we could talk about it. I mean, it's just never ending, his narratives. So I don't want to go too much into that, but and then now I'm able to the book has been now picked up for a film. They want to make it into a film, which Tom Hardy's dad's now doing the script for that, which is amazing.
And you were saying backstage that you want Tom Hardy to play Shaun Pinner?
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah, my son said, no, he's far too good looking and young to play you. You need someone like Harrison Ford. I was like, what? He's 81?
I can see Brad Pitt, man.
I'd be happy with anybody to be Daniel Craig. It'd be good.
Oh, Daniel Craig. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
That's a good shout. So I'm, we joke about it, but really the book is about everybody else that helped to inspire
fight, survive,
me.
Right?
Yeah, okay. Live, fight, survive. It's about everybody who inspired me to keep going. So my platoon commander, Dima, everybody I was in the prison with. So it's about them really. I don't know how I'd have done if I'd have done it on my own, but the film just gives us another platform to tell the world of what actually happened in Mariupol from ground level. Mm-hmm. So, it's not written by, somebody that wasn't there. It's actually written by somebody that was on the ground at the time. And what Russia's truly like. So really my work now is really sort of training about and talking about the after effects of being a prisoner, including PTSD and how to deal with it better.
If all goes well with this movie, when can people expect it to be released?
Oh, a couple of years, yeah.
A couple of years?
I would think. Yeah, okay. I think maybe the script is pretty much done and dusted. And then maybe next year we can look at casting and start filming maybe. So I think it's a couple of years yet before it's going to be really made. It's not my industry really, so I just have to listen to everybody else.
And do you plan on, continuing to fight in any capacity or just training?
No, I don't. When I'm 50, my spine and my injuries for being in captivity are pretty bad. And, if you're a 20-year-old, you probably have to deal with it a lot better. But I was 48, nearly 50, I'd be, through captivity. It's done some detrimental damage to my spine and my shoulder, my rotator cuff. And it took me 6 months to get the biological problems with not eating corrected, maybe a year. So got to, no, I won't be doing any frontline fighting. I could do more damage now. I mean, I've just taken Russia to court and won in Kiev. So we're now looking to enforce that verdict. And if we win that and we can enforce the verdict in the UK, it means every victim of war will be able to claim against the Russian state. Yeah. So it's really important that we followed that through. And if anything happened to me on the front, that would stop. So we're looking to get that completed soon.
Okay. And this is the part of the podcast. I'm sorry, we have to wrap it up. This is the part of the podcast. If there's anything we missed, you can touch upon it. Is there anything we missed?
No, I mean, we talked about the prisoners. Just keep support for the prisoners who, and show support and for their rehabilitation. It means so much to come back to hear that people are supporting them. It's a part of their rehabilitation, for one thing. You want to know when you've done something like that or you've been captured, that what you did was worthwhile. Because you've had 2.5 years of Russians torturing you, telling you what you did was rubbish. What you did was wrong. You need to have some guilt for what you did. That's what the Russians are saying to them for 2.5 years. So now they need all the love. They need all the help to rehabilitate back into normal life. So they need everybody telling them how good they did and how, what they did was worthwhile.
Okay, and before you were naming many charitable organizations that people can, support, why don't you take the time, maybe look into this camera. If you have any off the top of your head, you can kind of recommend that our viewers maybe donate to these charities, or if you can think of anything.
Oh yeah, Brave Youth Fund is good. You can find that on on my Twitter feed, or sorry, Twitter.
Oh, you can plug your social media as well.
Social media, and so you can find me on there. Actually, I've got a link tree. You can see them all on there. I do a lot of work with Norwegian charities, but if you go on my link tree on my bio. On Twitter and Instagram, you'll be able to see all the charities on there rather than go through them all. So,
all right. Well, great. Yeah. I believe it's snowy_UA, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Is that
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Yeah. And then
yeah.
I think on Twitter you're like old dog or
Old
something.
dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Many nicknames.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah. So thanks again for Shaun for coming out,
Oh, it's amazing.
and
Thank you.
thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Expats in Ukraine with Shaun Pinner. Super interesting guy. I hope you liked the cast, and if you did like it, leave a thumbs up or leave a comment down below if you want to get Shaun's book, Live, Fight, Survive. I mean, I'm going to get it, and Shaun promised me that he would sign it for me when I get it. So thanks again for tuning in, and you all have a good day. And Shaun, why don't you, I like to do this at the end, why don't you come over here, we can shake hands or something like this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, really good.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah.